Mic here. There we go. Yeah. I don't want to give away everything, just real quick. So real quick, you guys have a licensed tour guide here. I gotta, renew my license, I think, but that's okay. Still a licensed tour guide. So we're gonna do what you came to do in a basement in the Lower East Side on a Saturday night, and we're gonna take a little tour, baby. It's tour time with Tom. Let's go. Look, there's proof. I used to be a tour guide. Look at me pointing at stuff. Yeah, isn't that great? We're trying to build something together, and I like to party a lot. All right, and there's the dabbing rat. Cool. All right, guys, so today we're going to be doing a little tour through a part of town, let's call it, because it's not really a neighborhood, but it's very important. This is a place where you'll really get a feel for New York's hustle and bustle. It's a place with some of the most important New York City landmarks. So you're going to need to know these stories. It's got all types of people, all types of fashion. Everything from gray bro vests to blue bro vests. We're talking about Midtown, baby. Yeah. I know. You guys are thinking, that's not really a neighborhood, but it is. It's a part of town. Yeah, there's Midtown East, there's all these other parts, but I'm gonna talk about 42nd Street, because chances are, when you have your, father-in-law in town, and you're walking around Midtown, you're probably gonna be walking on 42nd Street. So I'm gonna give you some information that'll allow you to do anything else but actually talk to him. What better thing to do than just spit out facts at him? All right, let's do it. Let's get started. So we're going to start out, go ahead and just acknowledge off the bat. This all used to be Native American land, specifically the Lenape Native Americans under the Algonquin Nation. They lived in this area, about 60,000 they estimate in the metro area. That's a good amount of people. But when Henry Hudson came here, he saw them, he said, look at these people look different, they're primitive, their tools are primitive, their way of life is different, so we have discovered this land. That's pretty arrogant, That would be like if, some New Yorker went to Scranton, Pennsylvania and looked around and was like, wow, look at these people. Let's claim this for civilization, They just got to go to the Buffalo Wild Wings and they're like, these people are very primitive. Look at this. What are you doing on a Sunday? What's wrong with you? All right, so we're going to keep this moving. There's a lot of important stuff that's happened in Midtown. So starting out, Midtown was home to the distributing reservoir of one of the most important structures in New York City history. We're talking about the Croton Aqueduct. In 1842, the Croton Aqueduct was opened, bringing water down miles and miles and miles via aqueduct to New York, the first clean drinking water in New York's history. There was actually a huge distributing reservoir where the library is today. That was actually it. That was standing right where the library was. In fact, men would take their ladies on dates and walk around that thing. They'd climb up and they'd walk around. That was actually a date. And these weren't just serial killers. These were actually people. That was a thing to do. Pretty wild. And actually, there was a huge party. This was one of the biggest parties in New York history when it opened in 1842 because everything was so disgusting before it. Huge party. Actually, no, I don't know. It was a pretty big party. Can you zoom in there? Let's see. Oh, my God. Holy crap. I had no idea. I didn't put that there. I didn't know that picture. Wow. I guess it was a big party. All right. Anyways, let's keep it moving. All right, so right behind that reservoir where the library is today, right behind there in what is today Bryant Park, we'll talk about that later, there was an area known as the Crystal Palace. This was actually located there too. They built it for the 1853 World's Fair. It was made entirely of crystal. Oh, yeah, that's a really good idea. That's a good one right there. By the way, this is the OK symbol. I'm using it not like the white power symbol. It's really terrible. Scuba divers use this all the time, and you have pictures of people underwater doing this. You're like, ew. Anyways, guess what happened to this thing? 5 years later, it burned down. Yeah, shock. But this beautiful building used to be located there. They were trying to compete with London, who had built one exactly like it 2 years before. This one burned down. By the way, when I Googled this is actually a poster you can buy. So if any of you guys are looking to redecorate, just put that pretty cool, like a nice conversation piece when someone comes over to your house. All right, anyways, let's keep it moving. All right, so by the way, in this building, which burnt down, there was a very important thing that happened in 1853. So you may have heard of the name Otis, as in Otis Elevators. Well, this guy here is Elisha Otis. You know the name Otis. You've been in elevators, right? And you're just looking around trying not to talk to another human being. Well, this guy actually debuted his elevator at that World's Fair in the actual Crystal Palace. They built this giant structure, and he would have this thing take him up, like 4 or 5 stories, and then have his assistant cut the cord and drop dramatically. Whoa! And everyone would be like, wow, that's crazy, because before that, people used elevators, just not for passengers, because they were terrified of them. But with the advent of the emergency brake, they started using them. In fact, the Howitt Building in Soho used it, was one of the first buildings that utilized it in 1857. It was such a big deal that after this building opened, it was actually a department store, people would line up around the block every single day just to ride the elevator. The lesson of that is people in the olden times were dumb as hell. Not like us today. We're super smart. We do things like dance in front of our cell phones. Okay. We're very sophisticated. All right, well, let's keep this moving. Here we go. So, Grand Central. You can't not talk about Grand Central. But before Grand Central Terminal, there was the Grand Central Depot. Huh? Did you guys know that? This was actually built in 1870, before this terminal you guys know today. This was built for the trains that were not yet electrified. When they got electrified, they built Grand Central Terminal. Both were built by a man named Cornelius Vanderbilt. That's right, you guys know the name. By the way, Cornelius Vanderbilt got his start actually rowing people from his hometown in Staten Island. As a teenager, he would row people to Manhattan like a ferry service. How desperate do you have to be to get to Manhattan to pay a teenager to row you across? Just open a lemonade stand like a regular teenager. What the hell's wrong with you? But anyways, this is actually a picture. This is actually AI generated. This is the creepiest thing ever. I didn't make it, by the way. I didn't say AI generate Cornelius Vanderbilt. This was actually on there, and it says it's AI generated. That's what he looked like as a teenager. Kind of crazy. I went ahead and had them AI generate Cornelius Vanderbilt older, and this is what came up. So look at that. AI generated. Pretty cool. By the way, this was replaced by Grand Central Terminal. Huh? Yeah, gorgeous Grand Central Terminal, opened in 1913. One of the jewels of the United States, I would dare say the world. Very pretty. You could see the light flowing in before it was surrounded by all the skyscrapers. Very amazing. Now, I'll give you a fact. We could spend a whole lecture on this, so I'll just give you a quick fact. There is a beautiful sculpture on the outside, huh? French. This is actually called Transportation. You may have seen this. This is a Tiffany glass clock. This is actually, so this is Mercury, god of speed. To his right, Hercules, signifying strength. And to his left, Minerva, goddess of wisdom. This is all supposed to represent what transportation is in the United States. Pretty cool. It was designed by a man named Jules Félix Croton. Now here's a little, that name is pretty pretentious. If you think it's pretentious, wait till you hear this. This guy designed it in France, Paris, France, but he refused to come to New York because he didn't want to be corrupted by the horrible architecture and culture. They don't get much more French than that, if you ask me. But it's okay, because we got the last laugh, because he is dead. All right, let's keep it moving. Here we go. Now, one of the biggest things to impact Midtown, as well as the rest of the city, was the subway. The subway, man, 1904, the IRT opens the first line. You can see this old map. This is the route here from Lower Manhattan, splitting off. Now, this was a big deal. First of all, it was private to start. But this is what allowed everything to start getting settled much quicker. This is in 1904. Now, it passed through where Grand Central is, then it cut west and went up through what is today Times Square. By the way, little fun fact. If you stay on the 6 train, after the last stop, Brooklyn Bridge City Hall, they say everyone off, last stop. If you stay on it, you can actually go down through what is the first station in City Hall. Yeah, little fun fact. And so next time you do it, yeah, really, you can stay on. I've done it many times. Listen, you might get arrested. But if they do arrest you, just tell the officer that Tom Delgado sent you. They'll still arrest you, but maybe he'll subscribe to my channel. All right, let's keep it moving. By the way, one of the reasons Times Square is what it is today is because of that subway. The subway came through, and they wanted to build a commercial center around it. Pretty cool, right? And that's exactly what they did. It was actually called Longacre Square first. This is what it looked like. Isn't that nuts? It was all like the horses and carriages, this dirty horse manure everywhere. Not very different from today, but a lot fewer people. And the reason they call it Times Square is because of the New York Times building. That's right. You hear that, Berlin? You're learning stuff. You're never going to forget that. Das ist gut. Huh? Now, this was named after the New York Times, Times Square, and it's become this area where all the most important things and all the different events and milestones are celebrated here in New York City, like this. Yeah. Pretty nice. That's a real picture. I want you guys to know that. That is not AI generated. Now, by the way, it was the New York Times who came up with the idea to drop the ball every New Year's. Before 1907, they actually had fireworks, right? Now, the fireworks started to get to be too dangerous because there was too many people, right? So the city forced them to do something else. They took this idea of dropping a ball from shipping, from all the ships that would go around in the mid-1800s, early 1800s. They used to have a ball that would drop in the port cities and hit the base at a certain time to line up everyone's chronometers, which are used to measure distance and all that stuff on boats. And they took that idea that they're going to drop this ball at midnight of every year to synchronize everyone's lives down to the second so that we could all live in peace and harmony. It's a good thing they did that, huh? It worked like a charm. And also this. Sorry, keep it going. All right, keep it going. All right, so here we go. Library, baby. Look at this thing. We were talking about this before. This used to be the reservoir. I was talking about that before. So the library was built there in 1907, a beautiful Beaux-Arts building, gorgeous interior. I think this is one of the best buildings in the city. I love the Rose Reading Room. It's great. They even have the original Winnie the Pooh stuffed animals. You can go see the original Winnie the Pooh stuffed animals that actually inspired the books. All of this is secondhand, though, because the library was built in 1907 by Carrere and Hastings with the sole purpose of providing a venue for Carrie Bradshaw's wedding. Little known fact. I don't know if you guys knew that. Anyways, we're moving. Chrysler Building. We got to get to this. Chrysler Building, another amazing building, built in 1930, was the tallest building in the world. Briefly before the Empire State Building passed it a year later, was built for Walter Chrysler. And in fact, if you look up, you can see these things. Those are actual little hood ornaments from the actual car, not the actual size, relax, but that's the design of them. So he actually took different things from his company and put them on the building to kind of reflect his personality and who he was. That's pretty cool. Tesla did the same exact thing, actually. I don't know if you've ever seen their building. This is the Tesla headquarters. Okay, anyways, interesting story about this building, by the way. I don't know if you guys have heard of 40 Wall Street, but this is true. So this is a crazy story. Chrysler Building and this building were in a contest to see who was going to be the tallest in the city, right? So the Chrysler Building submits their plans to the city first. Knowing 40 Wall Street was going to do this, 40 Wall Street's like, what kind of plans do they submit? Okay, cool. And then they built theirs just a few feet taller. But Chrysler knew that was going to happen. So they filed an amendment later, changing it higher, and they built that extra part inside the stairwell and let 40 Wall Street christen their building first, and then 4 days later pushed the spire out of the top and said, go to hell. Pretty damn cool. Moral of that story is it doesn't matter how much money you have, what time of the world's history you live in, men will always be immature pissing contest participants. Okay, we're going to keep this moving. All right, here we go. This is my favorite building. I just wanted to show this to you guys. This is a really cool building. I think this is the prettiest building in the city. This building is the American Radiator Building on Bryant Park. Today it's the Bryant Park Hotel, designed by Raymond Hood. It's a beautiful mix of Art Deco architecture and Neo-Gothic. I think it's great. You can just point this one out whenever you're on a date, huh? And you're in Bryant Park, you're doing yoga in the park. Turn to your date and say, hey, that building right there, that's Tom Delgado's favorite building. And your date's gonna say, who the f*** is that? But that's okay, because then you can plug my YouTube channel. All right, let's keep this moving. Here we go. Another thing, Bryant Park. Interesting story. Bryant Park is actually named after a guy named William Bryant. William Cullen Bryant. Now, just a little bit of background. He was actually the editor-in-chief of the New York Evening Post. He was one of the people responsible for starting the movement to create Central Park. He was actually a published poet at age 16. That's impressive, man. This guy was a genius. I know if I was publishing poems at 16, it would have been like a haiku about Carmen Electra or something. But this guy was doing real stuff. Now, interesting fact, the Bryant Park Corporation is a business improvement district that actually runs the park. It's actually private. This is an important fact. You should know this going around New York. Union Square, all the different neighborhoods in New York have their own private organization that runs the neighborhood. It's a very important thing to keep in mind because that's how they stay clean, all stuff, but also how they avoid us meddling too much. They can kind of do what they want. But that's also the reason why one of its features is the bathroom, baby. I don't know if you guys have been to the Bryant Park bathroom, one of the cleanest in the city. It's great, and they run it, and it's really nice. I live in Queens off the 7, and some days I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna go to the bathroom in Bryant Park. I just take the 7, go in for a nice dump. Pretty great. It's pretty nice. You can have really beautiful interiors. They've done all kinds of stuff with this. They've even had some of the biggest parties have taken place here. I'm gonna do it. P. Diddy's white potty. The white potty? It's pretty good. Okay. Anyways, Midtown I think is great. It's like I said, it's not your typical neighborhood. It does have lots of beautiful features that you should know a little bit about because then you can talk to anyone who you go visit. I think it's great. I used to love walking around there, and take it from me, it may just be a bunch of smug lawyers walking around, but I should know because I used to be one. That's actually me, yeah. I know, it's really sad how far I have fallen. But that's Midtown, huh? Pretty cool, huh? Not bad. You guys know a little bit of stuff now. All right. I'm just going to keep this show going. You guys, I'll be coming back and doing some trivia and everything, but I'm going to keep the show going. You guys ready for your next comedian? No?